Hello and welcome to STEM with Mr. N's Robot Review in partnership with Robocube.co.uk, your destination for everything STEM. This week I'm going to be looking at how Ohbot can be used to enhance literacy in the classroom. Let's check it out. Coding can often seem quite daunting and be viewed as a standalone area of the curriculum. However, today with some simple block coding, I'm going to show how this can be used to enhance literacy. In my time as a class teacher, I've noticed pupils quite often struggle with knowing which words to put inside speech marks and which words should stay outside, as well as difficulty recognising nouns, adjectives, verbs and adverbs. So today I'm going to do some coding where Ohbot is going to speak out some dialogue and also use some random functions to write its own poetry using nouns, verbs, adverbs and adjectives. I'm going to start by looking at how Ohbot can be used to enhance teaching about dialogue. And for this, I'm going to use a short excerpt from one of my favourite childhood books, The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe. Now, in the previous robot review video, we saw that Ohbot can speak. But you can also change the voice of Ohbot, and it's through this function that I am going to use it to enhance teaching about dialogue. To demonstrate this, if I go into Events and pull out the When spacebar clicked and add that into my code, I can then go into Speech and there is an option there for Set Voice, and it currently says Microsoft George. I'm going to attach Set Voice Microsoft George to my When space key pressed, and under that I'm going to pull out the Say Hello Until Done block. Now when I push the spacebar, you'll hear Ohbot speak as Microsoft George.
Hello.
By clicking on the drop down, you can change the voice to Microsoft Hazel.
Hello.
And you can also change the voice to Microsoft Susan.
Hello.
You'll also see I've got some standard coding there that I looked at in the basics video, where Ohbot will blink roughly the same number of times as a human, and also its lips will move when it speaks. If you want to know more about that and you haven't seen the basics video, I'll put a link in the description so you can check that out. Now what I'm going to do is, using my extract from The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, I'm going to set Ohbot up to speak through the dialogue and change voice whenever a different character is speaking. So it starts off with a bit of narration, and I'm going to set Microsoft Hazel as my narrator. So under When space key pressed, I'm going to set voice to Microsoft Hazel, and then I'm going to put a Say Hello Until Done block. By clicking where it says hello and deleting that, I can now type in my own text. So I'm going to put in the first part of the dialogue, which is said by the narrator. The next part of the text from the book is direct speech said by the character of Peter. So I'm going to pull out my Set Voice Microsoft George and attach it under my previous speech. And now I'm going to pull out the Say Hello Until Done block, remove the hello and put in Peter's dialogue of "We've fallen on our feet and no mistake." But after this, the narrator says, "Said Peter." So I'm going to set the voice back to Hazel and then put in the text, "Said Peter." I'm now going to carry on like this for the rest of the text in this short excerpt that I am using, where we hear from Susan, we also hear from Edmund, and the narrator is still filling in bits of the text. I need to change the voice each time a different character is speaking, so I'm alternating between Hazel, George and Susan as my Microsoft voices, and inputting the text for the different characters and what they say. Now when I push the spacebar, let's hear how the whole thing sounds when it runs together.
As soon as they had said good night to the professor and gone upstairs on the first night, the boys came into the girls' room and they all talked it over.
We've fallen on our feet and no mistake,
said Peter.
This is going to be perfectly splendid. That old chap will let us do anything we like.
I think he's an old dear, said Susan.
Oh, come off it,
said Edmund, who was tired and pretending not to be tired, which always made him bad-tempered.
Don't go on talking like that.
I find that this could be a valuable way of enhancing the teaching of speech marks in the class. Because a voice has to change between narration and what somebody is actually saying, Pupils will have to focus on the words that are actually inside the speech marks, or if they're writing out dialogue, they'll need to make sure that Ohbot only speaks the parts in a certain voice that should be in speech marks and says the other bits. This can enhance their practice of knowing where to put speech marks and where to put the other words such as said Peter, said Susan, and the description of how Edmund was feeling. Now I'm going to look at how Ohbot can be used to enhance the teaching of nouns, adjectives, verbs and adverbs, and using some randomizer blocks, have Ohbot write his own poetry. To do this, what you want to do is create lists of words that Ohbot can use. You want to go into Data and click on Make List. You'll then be asked to give a title for your list, which I'm just going to use as example. And you see that now example appears in my list there of blocks in Data. By ticking the box next to example, another block comes up on the coding side where I can type in the words that I want to be used in this list. I'm just going to write in these are example words, and each word needs separated by a straight up and down line which can be found just above one of the slash keys on the keyboard. So that is how you create a list. I've already created lists called nouns, adjectives, verbs, adverbs, nouns to and adjectives to. So I'm going to tick all of these so they appear on my coding side, and you can see all the different words that I have used. When pupils are using this for their coding, they will need to correctly put in nouns, verbs, adverbs and adjectives. If they put in anything in the wrong place, when the Ohbot makes up the poetry, it is not going to sound right and the sentences will not flow correctly. For Ohbot to write his poetry, I'm going to add in a when space key pressed, and from control I'm going to put in a repeat loop, and I'm going to set the repeat number to 5 using the drop down. That means Ohbot is going to repeat this process 5 times before he moves on to anything else. From speech, I'm going to pull out the say hello until done, and then I'm going to go into operators and find the one which says join, and then it's got 2 blocks. I can drag that out and fill it into the say block where it says hello. So now it says say join, and I'm going to write in the in that first block. I'm then going to go into data and find the one that says item 1 of example. I'll drag that out and it will slot into the second white box on that green join block. I'm going to click on the drop down and change the 1 to random, and I'm going to change the example drop down to adjectives. So now I've got say join the random of adjectives until done. So Ohbot will say the, pick a random adjective from my list, and then move on. The next line is going to be say item random of nouns, followed by say item random of verbs, and then say item random of adverbs. So now Ohbot would be able to put together 5 lines of poetry, which is going to say the adjective, noun, verb, adverb. Once Ohbot had repeated this first bit 5 times, I want him to say some other independent bits to flesh out this poetry a bit more. So I'm going to attach a say block underneath my repeat, and I'm going to put in another join block into that, like I did in the repeat function. I'm then going to write I see into that first white box on my green join, go into data and pull out item and set it to random of adjectives to. Underneath that, I'm going to put in another say block, and from data put in item random of nouns to. I'm going to carry on with lines just like that at the bottom for I hear, I smell, I taste, I feel, and then I'm going to add in a very last line which says all around me. Now when I push the spacebar, Ohbot is going to put together 5 random lines of poetry to start with using the, and then adjective, noun, verb, adverb, and then go on to say I see, adjective, noun, I hear, I smell, I taste, I feel. It is going to sound like a really strange poem, but the important thing is that pupils will be able to correctly use nouns, adjectives, verbs and adverbs. So let's start the coding, push the spacebar and see how Ohbot's poem turns out.
There, which, shouted, quickly, fierce, queen, fought, quickly, The cowardly. Fawn. Shouted. Loudly. Fierce. Lion. Ran. Quickly. The cowardly. King. Cried. Quickly. I see angry. Sunshine. I hear old. Children. I smell odd. Sunshine. I taste bright. Children. I feel angry. Children. All around me.
Well, that's all for this week, showing just a couple of ways that Ohbot could be used to enhance literacy in the classroom. A huge thank you to Robocube for partnering with me for these robot review videos and for providing the Ohbot. Next time, I'm going to be looking at some of the different sensors that you can get with Ohbot and how these relate to real life. But until then, this has been STEM with Mr. N's Robot Review.